Chapter 6 War of Abandonment, she repeated. I know nothing, except that there was a war. My mother and her people talk about the Spacer War, that their ancestors had fought and won for control over the city. That is all I know. The Spacer War. I don't know about that. Perhaps it is the same war. Was really only one war after the storms went away. You know about the storms, do you? She nodded, and then remembered he could not see her. Yes, I read about the war, and Oldest Manifesto, and the storms, and then how the 500 came together to build the cities intending to help mankind out into space. But then nothing after that. She realized that the voice was coming from everywhere. So she got up and walked over to the sphere room. She was going to ask Eric for help. Just figured it would be better to ask after befriending him first. Oldest. I miss that old bugger. Most self-centered man I ever met. Yet at the same time, the most dependable one also. He used to throw the best parties. Really knew how to make everyone feel welcome. You knew Oldest? She asked in amazement, leaving the sphere room and wandering to other parts of the decrepit stations. Of course I did. I was one of the 500. I spent decades working with him. And the others? Well, my living self did anyway. Eric told her, and then launched into his story. He told her how he had been one of the people who had survived the storms out in space, how he had been part of the efforts to calm down the storms, and then he told her something about his role in building the cities. Others had the responsibility of the stations, and the tethers. And there was this great plan that I seem to have lost from memory now, but the war put an end to that. He told her the 500 had been a group of people who had survived the end of the world. They had watched powerless how humanity's greed, fueled behavior, had consumed up and burned down the planet's resources, how the climate succumbed to even more erratic weather, deserts freezing and glaciers melting, getting worse and worse till the storms gathered together and covered the entire planet. She almost cut in to tell him that she knew about that part, but she did not dare interrupt. She spotted what looked like an overgrown camera, and I had an idea of something she could do while she listened. Eric's voice went on. Then, once we had tamed the wild storms, again came the golden era. Eric continued. The human populations that had survived miraculously in bunkers and tunnels and in underwater habitats began to re-emerge, forming tribes of sorts that quickly went from just surviving to thriving. There was optimism in everyone then. The planet stood a chance of recovering. We could rebuild, only better this time. Eric went on and told how Oldest would come and go, mixing his time with few years out in the outer planets and his role in making plans and assigning roles. He was not only the smartest of us, but also the most determined. That is a powerful combination. I used to say that that was the reason he managed to live and grow ancient while everyone else from his time had died. He could usually break through disagreements and get people to compromise. Here, she could not help asking, Is time? How old are you? Well, technically, Eric, Oldest's friend, is dead. Remember? I am just a feeble memory of him. Eric was born a little more than 3 centuries after Oldest, around the 23rd century, said Eric, and continued while she had dug up a piece of cloth and a little knife and was looking for a chair or something like. Eric told of how the 500 had stayed in space, not braving the extreme regimes required to acclimatize back to Earth's gravity and still erratic weather. From there, they had watched the projects unfold and cities grow, and how humanity began to grow anew. We all shared this grief over what had been lost, Eric said, referring to the 500. Most of the planet's biodiversity gone. Bye-bye, sayonara. But the new ones, born during and after the storms, they did not care as much. To them, the planet was freshly cleansed and theirs to recolonize. The Great Cleanse even became a common description of the horrible mass extinction event, a positive spin on one of humanity's most atrocious moments. We did not approve. She heard Eric's tone darken as he spoke of this, and other ideological divergences between the 500 and the new emerging population. Some of the 500 began to warn of the direction things were headed, how the humans below had not learned a lasting lesson from the sacrifice of billions of years of evolution in the Earth's biosphere. History doomed to repeat itself. Oldest took off for longer and longer periods out into the outer planets to work on some projects of his, rumors had it. He was never comfortable in his public role, although he played it well, had a bit of a cult-like following. Everyone had tremendous respect for the oldest man alive. Only people began fighting over the interpretation of his opinions. He left and did not return. I get that, she said. All the trauma over the manifesto. He blamed himself for the end of the world. Yes, aptly put, said Eric, and continued. So we invited all the tribes to join us on a global council. They all agreed, and things were fine at first. Then some forward thinkers started to ask how the world would be divided once the repopulation started to exceed the areas designated by the 500. Collectively, they scoffed at the plans to have Earth be a national park. The tribes began to argue over how to divide the planet and its remaining resources. Now that the oil and gas were spent, they increasingly demanded that the 500 share their technologies. Tensions continued to grow. The spacers, as they called them, became a derogatory term, and those who had saved the planet were slowly pushed out of the conversation. Some tribes even began to change the narrative, claiming that the spacers had caused the storms to begin with, in order to claim the remains for themselves. It got ugly, Eric told her with something bordering on rage in his tone. Meanwhile, she had found something like a step and had set to cutting out and cleaning a camera she had spotted. Can you access this camera? She asked between his sentences. Why, yes I can. Remarkable. You have cured me of my blindness. You are a regular miracle worker, yes, said Eric's voice, pleasantly light-hearted now. Very happy with herself, she moved on to another camera and said, So what happened then? How did the war with the spacers start? Or the war of abandonment? Ah, yes. Where was I? Eric, then, as he returned to the narrative, his deep, serious voice returned. Then the violence began. The 500 looked down on the planet from orbit, believing themselves to be safe out in space. However, the tribes poured their ingenuity into crafting ways to do damage to the godlike beings above. The viral attacks were clumsy at first, little mechanical faults that were no more than a nuisance. Then, as the tribe's hackers became improved, they were able to do real damage, stealing information on technologies, interfering with food production to ruin crops, jamming or venting airlocks. They became increasingly inventive, with many of the 500 either taking off out into space or advocating for more extreme measures against the lowers. But the majority held on to the dream of a peaceful solution, that the tribes would mature and eventually agree to listen. I mean, we were just trying to protect them from themselves, really. That dream was shattered after the peace talks, though. She had just finished cleaning another camera. "Try this one," she said. "Hey, there you are," said Eric's joyful voice. "You're very pretty, although you look as if you could use a bath." Ignoring that comment, she went on to another camera and said, "Please go on." "Go on with what?" came the pleasant Eric voice. "Oh yes, the war." And then back to the grave storyteller mode. Then came the armistice offer. Most of the largest tribes signed letters of intent that if the Spacers handed over the sovereignty of the planet to a newly formed alliance of the tribes, then they would leave the Spacers alone and map out some areas for nature reserves. A delegation of 30 of the 500 went down to the planet to negotiate terms for a compromise that would guarantee enough land for nature while still leaving ample space for the tribes to grow. It was a very fair proposal. Not one of those 30 returned, all killed by the lowers. She gasped. How could they be so stupid and evil? Eric continued. Some of the tribes planted bombs, others used poison, and others outright shot and stabbed. It had all been coordinated along with a massive onslaught of viruses and launches into space of ingenious weapons. We had not seen this coming. There were many casualties. One of them was me. Kiri stopped and the speakers went quiet. She did not know what to say. She kept working on clearing the growth from the camera in silence, eventually saying, "I'm so sorry. That sounds awful." "What was?" came Eric's voice in a pleasantly bouncy voice. "Ah, I can see you through that one too now. Definitely sure that you're real now. Ha! And I thought you were a sign that I'd finally lost it. Gone bonkers. Kaputski. What was I saying before? Ah, yes, I died." Then shifting to a grim tone, "I and the others who had gone down had been the ones keeping the peace. So with us gone and this horrendous atrocity, the more militantly minded of the 500 took over. They no longer saw the tribes as humans imbued with humanity. Instead, they saw the lowers as just another species that needed to be controlled and balanced. The cities were able to monitor those living there, so those who lived there were allowed to live. Anyone else was a potential threat. With centuries of life and technology and advance of the lowers, they launched their decisive assaults. Remotely controlled from orbit war mechanoids were launched down all over the planet to subdue those they could and eliminate those they couldn't. The mechs were far superior to anything the Terrans had. Any force capable of mounting noteworthy defenses were annihilated by orbital bombardments. However, many of the tribes still know how to hold up deep underground, their ancestors having survived multiple generations through the storms. They continued to attack and hack whenever they could. Then, seeing no option other than defeat, they launched their worst. Little nanomaterials built out of stolen technology, designed to self-replicate and destroy anything that hinted of life. These nanoflakes of death spread out effectively, hunting anything they could find in orbit. Space, an already inhospitable place before, had become the very definition of hell for life. What was even worse was that these virals were attached to certain wavelengths and frequencies. Anything that sent out a signal could attract them. What they could not physically reach, they poisoned indiscriminately with viruses. That was effectively the end of remote communication on the planet. They wiped out the remaining habitats that still had orbited the planet and had not gone radio silent soon enough. Eric's voice trailed off. She had not found other cameras, so she had returned to the control room in anticipation of a chance to ask about the sphere. How did you end up here? She asked instead. I volunteered, Eric answered brightly. I still feel a sense of responsibility. That maybe if I had been smarter somehow, I could have set history on a different course. I think Oldest said something similar to that, she said, referring to something she had read on the lift up. You very well might have, said Eric, sounding all old and wise. I suppose it might be a commonality amongst us to live centuries. I feel like that. I'm only 16, she said. Maybe you are just on the early stage of your centuries of life, Eric said, amused at his own humor. Did I answer your question? What was your question? She thought for a moment and asked, what happened to the other cities? Is there someone like you in all of them? I'm not sure there is anyone like me, Eric started with a cocky twang. But yes, every city has got its own caretaker. I used to know who they were. However, it seems I cannot remember now. His memory seemed patchy as he told her how the cities had very different populations. In the Ocean City, Wet, the people who had worked with the 500, many of whom were direct descendants of ours, he told her. That was the only one where we did not close down the station. In all the others, we could not be sure that they were not full of the lowers. She yawned and realized that it was time. She could not sleep here, with no water and beds covered in the same thing, covering the walls. She had to ask Eric if he could help. But she did feel sorry to leave this poor being all alone again. Yes, I will prepare a bubble for you, he told her. She heard noise coming from the room with the sphere. I'm so grateful to have met you, Eric, she told him and meant it. She told him that once she found Oldest, that she would ask him to help him too. Eric just said, that's nice. And then as she entered the sphere, he said, off you go now, with the slightest hint of sadness. A second later, and she was launched off towards the third station. She felt a tear streaming down her neck. Empathy towards Eric for what he had gone through and the story he had told her. She added him to the list of people who she was doing this for, launching herself into the unknown yet again. She stepped out of the sphere onto the third space station. Immediately, her senses told her that it was different from the other two stations. It was not shiny nor moldy. Rather, it was more matte and warm. The smell here was more complex. There were many layers to the smell. Activity of people mixed with the metallic smell of industry, with another funky, salty odor that she did not recognize. There were much more signs of use. The first station had looked as if it was fresh, out of the box, while the second had been overgrown. Even in space, nature would take over given the possibility. She tried calling out, asking if the station's manager could hear her, that Eric had sent her from the other station, but she went unanswered. So she went exploring. She found a room with bunks. Many of the beds were unmade, but she could not figure out how long they had been disturbed. But it did indicate that there were no regular maintenance of the place. Maybe it had been abandoned like the others, only much later. She fell asleep reading from the tablet, woke up a few times, quickly nodding back to sleep. When she finally felt rested, she went out into the hallway from the sleeping quarters and wandered over to the viewing area. The windows curved outwards, allowing her to look down at the ocean below. It had been in the middle of the night when she arrived, so she had seen little except the outlines of waves slamming on what looked like doors. Ports lit up here and there around the city. Now in daylight, the sea was calm, and she could see how the city marked out patterns of lights laid out in a radius around where the cable pierced the ocean. She contemplated staying on the station a few days. A little rest seemed like a great idea after all that she'd been through. Only she worried if she stopped moving, she might just break down and fall apart. So she finished a quick look around the station, then went to the lift that had waited for her, door agape, and pressed the button, signaling it to descend. She embraced the days on the way down as a gift, time to rest, read, and prepare for what may come. The lift landed and opened. She smelled the ocean, full force now, realizing that had been the unfamiliar smell up on the station. The hallways were matte black, walls with soft blue lights lining the floors. Here and there were windows through which she could see the ocean around. It was so alive. Flowing waves moving together this way and that. Trying to remain unseen at first, she hid and scuttled around. She saw how most people dressed similar to how the lowers dressed back in her city, although the clothes were more uniform. In her city, each person's clothes had some variations with personal touches to distinguish themselves, with fashionable trends that came and went. But here the clothes mostly looked the same, the straps and things all seeming to have a reason for being there, for some function unknown to her. She wondered if she should try saying that hers was a unique design, made by someone who had been lost to her in a painful way, hoping that the awkwardness of such a topic might outweigh the curiosity to question her about it. People did not seem to give her any attention when they saw her, so she stopped hiding and walked around curious to explore this new world. Eventually, she stumbled upon something that really caught her eye. Bright colors flashing and twirling around holograms of what she guessed were spaceships. She had to investigate. She walked in, doing her utmost best to look like she belonged there. The room she entered was clearly a store of some sort. There were all manner of colorful boxes with packages containing some products she did not recognize. "How can I help you, sweetie?" came a voice from a big, dark-skinned woman who had emerged from behind a counter at the back of the store. She hesitated a moment, not sure what to say. The woman read the tension in her shoulder and said, "Take your time. Feel free to browse around." The woman's voice was so relaxed and soothing that she felt as if she could melt into it. "Here," the woman said, handing her something dotted and graining. "Have a taste," she said with an expectant smile. She dared not refuse, so she took the thing and put it in her mouth. It was grainy, but also had some chewy parts. It tasted deliciously sweet. Yep, tastes good, doesn't it? My special recipe, famous across the solar system, the woman said proudly. What is it? She asked, starting to relax. It's a mixture of things made to help you relax and feel as if you're lounging on a sunny day by the beach on Earth, baked into a cookie. It tastes really good. It was the best tasting thing she had eaten for probably forever. Glad you like it, the woman said, beaming her a smile. As I said, feel free to browse and then let me know if I can help you with anything. My name is Beth. She smiled back and turned to the shelves, lining the walls as another customer came into the store. She picked up some packages and pretended to read what it said, but could not decipher it. She understood the words, but the context made no sense to her. Descriptions of states of being and irrational dimensions. She continued to pretend to browse while listening in on the conversation behind her. The customer clearly knew what he was here for, and after a short conversation with Beth, he had paid and was on his way back out. A short moment later, Beth said, You're not from around here, are you? Where are you from? She put the pack she had been staring at back into the shelf and said, I was born in one of the other cities. The one 2 cities to the west. I just arrived down here today. She listened to herself saying the words while another part of her brain was thinking why she was telling this woman she had just met what was supposed to be a secret. She realized that she was feeling odd, as if all her muscles were soft and flowing like water, and her mind was so relaxed and peaceful. What was happening? Well, I'll be damned. I've not heard of anyone visiting from another city in my lifetime, and in my store, no less. How did you get here, if you don't mind me asking? She felt that it was too late to lie now. She wasn't even sure that she could in the state that she was in. What had been that thing that she ate? She told Beth the tale of flying between stations in broad strokes, and how her goal was to get into space to find Aldous. Beth invited her to come into the back room and sit down. Beth brought out a tray with all kinds of tasty-looking treats that she set to munching on in between answering Beth's questions. Part of her still worried that Beth might tell the wrong people about her and the tablet, but it was too late now. So she opened up about everything. She really needed a friend to talk to. Beth was very interested to hear about her home and its history. She told her about this spacefaring ocean city in turn, how the spacers who visited here had to maintain their bodies when they traveled around in space so that they would survive the massive toll that Earth's gravity put on them. Beth told her about how the post-spacer war period had been. This city was allowed to roam the seas as long as they did not damage the recovering ocean pile, and to fly out into space. Before she could ask, what about the nanoflakes of death? Beth told her how, in those first years, many had died, and a large portion of the space-worthy vessels had been lost. However, the treasures of space pulled the foolhardy to test their luck until they learned how to travel without attracting the ever-present god of death. Earth's space fleet had gone from thousands to hundreds to just over 100 space-worthy vessels today. Most of them were continuously flying cargo to and from Earth from orbiting stations that had survived the space plague and were now centers for people harvesting debris and junk, many of whom could never return down the gravity well. And Beth was the purveyor of the finest of all special tasty treats, made from ingredients grown in and around kelp forests. Her wares were known as lifesavers in spacer circles. Few things helped as much on long space hauls to reset the tired mind than her cocktails and edibles, or so Beth told her. Wow, that's incredible, she said, open-mouthed and feeling wonderful, listening to these fabulous healers' tales. Whatever Beth had fed her was giving her a wonderful feeling of euphoria. Do you think one of your customers would give me a lift out into space? They're a reclusive bunch, very protective of their privacy. Who knows what they get up to on their long voyages out there? The ships are mostly automated. One customer told me that the most of them spend their time in virtual worlds designed to keep them happy and sane. Worlds designed to meet their every need. Considering what some of them get up to while they're down here, I imagine that those ships contain worlds of depravity unseen in any other place in the solar system. Who am I to judge? Beth said with a shrug. She was arranging some wares in the shelves as she spoke. Let me think about it. I will see what I can do. When she had finished, Beth walked up to her and reached into one of the many pockets on her colorful tunic and pulled out the key. Holding out the key to her, she said, I have a back room where you can stay, at least for the night. Then tomorrow we can think about how to get you into space. She took the key and followed to where Beth pointed. It was a small room, but very cozy, made to take dreamy post-tasty sweet naps in. She got out the tablet and started reading about the Ocean City and how it was different from the others. She did not last long, as she was very tired and too tired to concentrate, so she put the tablet away and closed her eyes. She woke up in the middle of the night to some noise out in the store. Was Beth still out there? She got up quietly and snuck out of the room. It was not Beth. Instead, there were two bulky men wearing dark green waterproof coveralls. They each had a bag and were filling them with boxes from the store in a hurried manner. They were stealing from Beth's store. She briefly thought of screaming to try to scare them off, but lacked the courage. Feeling useless, she snuck back into the bedroom and locked the door behind her. She was pretty sure that she heard the guys leaving shortly after, but she stayed in the room until she heard Beth's voice a few hours later. When Beth saw her, she said, Oh, thank goodness you're all right. There was a breaking in the night. I know, she said. I'm sorry, I did not know what to do. I came out in the night and I saw them, but I had no way to contact you, so I hid in the room and waited for you, she told Beth, distraught. That's all right, sweetie. You say you saw them. Can you tell me what they look like? She described the two guys in as much detail as she could, until Beth said, Yes, I think I know who you are describing. Good. You did good. She did not feel like she had done good. She could have found a weapon and fought them off or something. You wait here for me and mind the store, Beth said, and reached behind the counter and pulled out something like a long thing with spikes that looked very menacing. Beth quickly explained to her how to use the register in case a customer came while she was gone, and told her not to worry. Most of her clients knew exactly what they wanted. And then Beth left.